Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I supposed to talk in English, but democracy ruled by the majority. And I see here the majority are Indonesian and Malaysian too. So maybe it's better to talk in Indonesian, bahasa Indonesia, and let the interpreter translate it into English. That's better, like, Pak. Hah? Oke, jadi saya bicara bahasa Indonesia saja, nanti terjemahan yang bahasa Inggris. Eh, Pertama-tama saya mengucapkan terima kasih atas undangan untuk apa namanya sharing pada siang hari ini, dan juga selamat kepada si Popsi yang telah menyelenggarakan acara yang sangat penting saya kira buat kita semua. Jadi topik saya itu tentang companies and their smallholders, implication of the EU deforestation regulation. So to begin with, saya ingin melihat dulu seberapa penting market pasar EU itu. Kalau kita lihat di sini, memang EU sekarang masih nomor 3 setelah India dan Cina. Dan saya kira merupakan market yang memiliki high value added dan large consumer market. Walaupun dalam beberapa tahun terakhir ini memang ekspor kita ke sana itu mengalami penurunan yang cukup signifikan karena memang banyaknya restriksi perdagangan yang diterapkan oleh EU itu sendiri. Nah, sekarang loncat langsung kepada EUDR itu sendiri. Secara singkat, apa itu EUDR? EUDR itu adalah merupakan regulasi yang diperkenalkan oleh negara-negara EU ya, yang bertujuan itu untuk mencegah bahwa impor atau ekspor yang dikirim ke EU itu menyebabkan deforestasi. Jadi dia ingin mencegah deforestasi yang lebih lanjut akibat daripada ekspor dari negara-negara produsen ke EU itu. Nah, kemudian komoditas yang dicakup dalam EUDR itu adalah palm oil, kayu, rubber, karet, kemudian kopi, kakao, dan beef dan soybean itu kacang kedelai. Ya. Dan juga mereka mensyaratkan bahwa produk yang diekspor itu harus legal. Legal dalam sini, dalam tanda quote di sini ya, dalam tanda kutip, karena memang masih menimbulkan persoalan saya kira menginterpretasikan apa yang disebut dengan legality itu. Nah, jadi kemudian importers di EU ya, importers jadi perusahaan-perusahaan di EU itu memerlukan mensyaratkan informasi dari palm oil yang diimpor itu pertama adalah geolokasinya. Ya, jadi poligon dengan area yang dipanen gitu. Kemudian nama dan kontak daripada detail daripada suppliernya ya, dan informasi lebih lanjut tentang legality itu. Jadi supply chains daripada rantai pasok daripada produk tersebut itu harus secara detail didata didokumentasikan untuk diketahui asal daripada produk tersebut. Itu kira-kira sederhananya EUDR itu seperti itu. Nah, tapi kemudian dalam aturan tersebut ada beberapa perkecualian lah. Perkecualiannya itu adalah untuk yang disebut EU sebagai petani itu, ya petani smallholder farmers itu small. Jadi small di sini ya kecil, petani kecil gitu ya, yang didefinisikan sebagai kurang dari 4 hektar gitu. Kalau data dari Pak Jono tadi yang kebanyakan justru yang 4 hektar ya Pak Jono ya. Ya Pak. Jadi rata-rata mungkin di kita ini sekitar antara 4 sampai 5 hektar lah gitu kan. Majority daripada petani kita itu. Nah, kemudian EU memang mengecualikan bahwa petani kurang dari 4 hektar itu exempt daripada aturan ini. Tetapi mereka harus tetap menyediakan ya GPS location data, kemudian implementasinya memang sampai sekarang ini belum jelas gitu tentang petani di bawah 4 hektar ini gitu kan. Nah, EU masih mempersiapkan guideline petunjuk, kalau di kita mungkin namanya petunjuk pelaksanaan lah daripada apa namanya nih bagaimana yang terkait dengan petani di bawah 4 hektar itu. Nah, selain itu juga definisi EU tentang petani di bawah 4 hektar itu problematik ya, karena memang kita masih memiliki perbedaan konsep tentang petani kecil itu, baik dari negara-negara lain ataupun dari negara-negara atau dari lembaga-lembaga multilateral seperti FAO, Bank Dunia, EU sendiri, RSPO, SIRAT itu memiliki definisi yang berbeda ya kan tentang petani kecil itu. Termasuk di Indonesia. Di Indonesia ini petani kecil dalam konteks minyak sawit itu di bawah 25 hektar berdasarkan definisi dari Kementerian Pertanian. Kalau di Malaysia sekitar 40 hektar ya, Dr. Puah, right? So this one apa namanya uh, berbeda-beda artinya definisi daripada petani itu. Nah, ini kira-kira ya petani yang bakal terimpak daripada aturan EUDR itu. Jadi istilahnya itu masih ada sekitar apa namanya 2 juta petani yang akan memerlukan mensyaratkan pemenuhan EUDR itu sendiri gitu. Ini bisa dilihat lebih lanjut. Nah, poin penting saya ini adalah bahwa EUDR itu ya secara filosofi itu akan merusak ya paradigma pembangunan kelapa sawit kita. Itu poin yang ingin saya sampaikan. Kenapa? Karena model partnership antara petani dengan perusahaan itu memiliki suatu filosofi pembangunan ya yang inklusif dan berkelanjutan, ya kan? Dari sosial, dari sisi ekonomi, dan dari aspek lingkungan ini merupakan suatu konsep yang sebenarnya kita ingin promote, ya kan? Nah, dengan adanya EUDR ini yang kemudian diperkirakan akan me-exclude petani kecil dari supply chains apa namanya rantai pasok minyak sawit itu, maka dengan sendirinya ya akan menimbulkan atau akan menyebabkan rusaknya tatanan yang sedang kita bangun itu ya. Dan nanti akan juga menimbulkan potensi konflik antara petani dan perusahaan. Ini yang saya kira poin penting yang ingin saya sampaikan. Karena demikian, karena memang sejak awal, sejak tahun pertama kita apa namanya nih, membangun ya eh, industri minyak sawit kita itu, maka inclusiveness itu ya apa namanya, ya inklusi ke terintegrasinya ya antara petani, pemerintah, kemudian perusahaan itu merupakan hal yang ingin kita capai ya kan melalui partnership tersebut. Jadi mulai tahun 80-an itu memang secara jelas ya, secara tegas kita ingin menganut model pembangunan yang inklusif dan berkelanjutan itu ya kan. Di mana semua stakeholders ya kan, perusahaan, petani, jadi misalnya petani, masyarakat itu tergabung berpartisipasi dalam pembangunan tersebut gitu kan. Nah, adanya UDR ini ya kan itu yang akan merusak tatanan tersebut gitu. Ini yang poin yang ingin saya kira kita harus kemukakan kepada pihak EU itu. Nah, kemudian eh, bahkan government kan pemerintah yang meregulasi kita harus berpartner dengan petani tersebut gitu. Bukan hanya sebagai pekerja ya kan, tapi dia itu sebagai sebuah entity yang independen tapi terintegrasi dalam sebuah rantai pasok dan industri itu sendiri gitu. Nah, ini kira-kira poin yang saya kira ya secara boleh dikatakan sebenarnya mungkin Pak Rijal ya ideologi gitu loh. Ideologi kita itu yang seperti itu yang harus kita kemukakan ke EU itu. Nah, ini juga kita melihat bagaimana terintegrasinya supply chain dari para petani itu, ya kan. Kemudian, nah ini contoh-contohnya misalnya di perusahaan di mana tempat saya eh, apa namanya terlibat di ASEAN Agri, itu bukan hanya saja dengan petani plasma sekarang ini berpartner, tapi juga dengan petani independen. Ya kan kita membangun partnership tersebut gitu. Jadi merupakan second generation daripada partnership kita dengan pertama dengan plasma, kemudian kita kembangkan lebih luas lagi dengan petani independen. Oke, saya kira ini contoh saja ingin ada banyak saya kira perusahaan-perusahaan yang sekarang ini juga seperti itu, bukan hanya punya perusahaan ASEAN Agri saja gitu kan. Nah, ini juga menunjukkan bagaimana sebenarnya kompleksitas daripada supply chain apa namanya nih rantai pasok minyak sawit itu, apa kelapa sawit itu. Jadi tidak sesederhana yang saya kira yang dibayangkan oleh para elit ya, para politisi atau para ya elit politik di EU gitu ketika menyusun formulasi ini yang mensyaratkan semua apa namanya nih dokumen dari keseluruhan supply chain itu harus didokumentasikan ya kan, kemudian diberikan atau diberikan hak aksesnya kepada supplier apa namanya importer di sana untuk mendapatkannya. Jadi tidak sederhana itulah apa namanya supply chain yang kita miliki dalam minyak sawit ini. Nah, ini kemudian tadi sudah saya sampaikan saya kira ya apa namanya pembeli itu mensyaratkan beberapa hal ya, geolokasi, kontak information, apa form of legality declaration ya kan. Kan kemudian informasi ini apa pass along the supply chains ya dilakukan melalui keseluruhan supply chain itu sendiri gitu. Ini yang saya kira merupakan sesuatu yang sangat kompleks dan sangat saya kira sekarang ini belum bisa dilakukan di Indonesia, mungkin karena besarnya size-nya itu yang sangat besar. Nah, sekarang kalau kita lihat resiko yang daripada apa EU ini ya, EUDR itu adalah untuk smallholders gitu kan, karena adanya kekurangan informasi yang dalam supply chain smallholder tersebut, kompleksnya informasi ya kan. Kemudian misalnya bagaimana kalau produk itu dikategorikan sebagai yang ilegal ya kan. Nah, jadi kemudian nanti dianggap bahwa terjadi deforestasi. Kemudian masalahnya juga adalah bahwa EU itu menghasilkan suatu map deforestasi yang salah juga, yang tidak tepat, yang tidak akurat ya. Kalau kita lihat contohnya di sini, bagaimana mungkin di sini disebutkan ini di Jakarta itu disebut sebagai uh, tropical forest. Padahal ini di Jakarta ya. Lokasinya itu di Gondang Dia, kalau masalah nggak salah itu satu lagi di daerah Jakarta Kota sana juga lah. Ini dianggap oleh map di EU itu sebagai hutan, padahal itu jelas di Jakarta mana ada hutan lagi kan gitu. Ini contoh-contoh di mana map daripada apa hutan yang di EU itu tidak akurat ya untuk diterapkan di negara kita. Nah, contoh lain lagi, ini juga demikian nih, ya. Eh, Tidak akurat juga contoh yang apa namanya yang dimiliki oleh EU tentang terkait daripada peta hutan itu sendiri. Dan ini juga sudah disampaikan juga oleh duta besar kita di Jerman, Pak Hafaz ketika dia menyampaikan presentasinya di FONAP. Jadi banyak ketidakakuratan gitu. Ya. Nah jadi ini, nah kemudian jadi yang tadi yang saya lanjutkan itu adalah itu rencana EU seperti itu. Padahal sebelumnya Unilever pun pernah melakukan hal yang serupa, ya ingin pastikan bahwa produk yang dihasilkan itu bebas dari deforestasi dan diterapkan dari supplier mereka. Hasilnya apa? Hasilnya adalah 80% smallholders itu terpotong daripada supply chain tersebut gitu. Jadi saya kira kalau misalnya Unilever pernah melakukan hal tersebut, maka dengan UDR akan diterapkan mungkin akan menghasilkan hal yang serupa, bahwa mungkin
Pak Fadil, please the time.
oh ya oke. Minta 2 menit lagi Pak ya. Tadi pembukaannya 2 menit. Terpotong daripada supply chain tersebut. Ini yang kita khawatirkan, ya kan? Gitu. Nah ini economic impact-nya ini saja ya, singkat saja. Jadi dalam konteks Indonesia, kalau misalnya UDR itu diterapkan ya, economic impact-nya itu adalah akan ada 2% decline in output ya in Malaysia, kemudian 0,7% decline in output in the CPO sektor secara keseluruhan. Kemudian juga studi yang menunjukkan bahwa increase tarif equivalent of 1% decrease in value of Malaysian palm oil export by 0,4%. Jadi kalau misalnya IUDR ini diterapkan, kemudian dianggap sebagai tambahan tarif baru, ini akan terjadi gitu. Nah kemudian impact-nya juga saya kira di sini disebutkan bahwa akan ada penurunan ya jumlah sekitar 1% ya yang diimpor kalau misalnya kita menerapkan IUDR tersebut. Tapi kalau misalnya tidak diterapkan, maka akan ekspor kita akan turun 9% ya. Nah, satu lagi saya kira, nah ini financial impact-nya juga sudah cukup dibaca di sana. Saya kira akan terjadi akan ada tambahan 3,5% daripada revenue companies ya kan. Kemudian untuk smallholders juga akan sangat berpengaruh ya. Nah, terakhir saya kira bahwa bukan hanya Indonesia saja yang tidak atau belum siap terhadap IUDR ini, tapi juga negara-negara Eropa sekarang juga menggugat sendiri aturan tersebut. Jadi dua-duanya ini belum siap gitu loh, baik pihak produser maupun pihak pembeli gitu kan. Nah, bagaimana kemudian kita meresponnya? Saya kira ini mungkin kita nggak usah lah ya. Nah, ini meresponnya, saya kira pemerintah pertama itu kita harus bagaimanapun juga sampai saat ini posisi saat ini harusnya tetap menolak IUDR tersebut sebelum itu diterapkan gitu. Nah, kemudian pas diterapkan mungkin kita juga harus melihat kemungkinannya membawa ini ke WTO. Karena udah jelas ini diskriminatif terhadap petani kan gitu. Kemudian yang udah kalau misalnya juga diplomasinya itu juga harus misalnya meminta penundaan sampai kita siap ya kan. Dan seterusnya. Kemudian untuk company saya kira ini kita juga harus melihat bahwa beberapa supplier di sana atau importer di sana siap apa tidak dengan IUDR itu sendiri. Jangan sampai mereka nggak siap, kita justru yang tergopoh-gopoh mempersiapkan diri gitu kan. Nah kemudian harusnya juga company itu memastikan sebanyak mungkin atau sebisa mungkin bahwa smallholders itu, petani kecil itu diakomodasi di dalam UDR ini. Dan terakhir untuk smallholders ya apa yang bisa dilakukan? Ya protes, ya kan, seperti demo itu sudah kita lakukan kan. Ya saya kira untuk harus voice-nya itu suaranya harus disampaikan secara tegas gitu bahwa ini pasti akan merugikan petani gitu kan gitu. Nah, saya kira kira-kira itulah ya kan protes dan berbagai bentuk ini lain gitu ya untuk menghadapi UDR tersebut. Tapi yang paling penting harus ada keserasian dan kesejalanan antara pemerintah, perusahaan dan petani gitu kan. Jangan sampai pemerintah bilang A, petani bilang B, perusahaan bilang C gitu kan. Saya kira itu. Terima kasih.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm going to present the roles of the Council of Palm Oil Producing Countries, CPOPC, in addressing EUDR. This is the outline of the presentation. I'm going to give an overview of the global vegetable oils industry. And fortunately, Dr. Fadil already briefed about some of the economic and trading of palm oil to the EU market. Then we're followed by the EUDR, European Union Deforestation Regulation, and strategies in responding to EUDR, particularly by CPOPC and palm oil moving forward. And before I conclude. So in general, palm oil is the most traded and consumed vegetable oils in the world. This is based on the statistics of the year 2023, as you can see. Total export in 2023 amounted to 90.53 million tons, in which palm oil already amounted to 56%. While in terms of a total consumption, out of 213 million tons, 38% of palm oil was consumed, followed by soybean oil. And Indonesia is the largest producer, consumer, and exporter of palm oil. So now just to recap about the European Union Deforestation Regulation, EUDR. The EUDR was published in the Official Journal of the EU on the 9th of June 2023 and entered into force on 20th day after its publication, which was 29th of June last year. And those relevant articles will apply beginning 30th December 2024. This is just a recap of what I presented last year at the International Smallholders Workshop. And in the Article 3 of prohibitions of the EUDR, these are the three requirements of the EUDR that the producing countries, including palm oil producing countries, producers have to comply in order to meet the requirements of EUDR. So there are three conditions. The first, they are deforestation free, where the cutoff date is 31st December year 2020. It means that all forests all oil palm planted area should have been in place before 31st December 2020. And they can be considered as deforestation free. Second is they have been produced in accordance with the relevant legislation of the country of production. It means that those are legal in the producing countries complying to the national legislation. In this context, it is producing countries, for example, in Indonesia and Malaysia. And third, they are covered by due diligence statement, in which this is where the geolocations and the traceability traceable to the plot of land of the commodities. And another requirements of the EUDR is the country benchmarking system. There are three-tier system for the assessment of countries or parts thereof based on the risk categories of high risk, low risk, and standard risk. Upon the enter into force of the EUDR on the 29th of June, all countries, including the EU countries, are assigned standard risk. And the list of countries will, or parts thereof, will be published through the implementing acts to be adopted no later than 30th December, where all the relevant articles shall apply. In this context, as of today, as we are speaking, the Implementation Acts, in which what Dr. Fadil was mentioned, which is the guidelines for the implementation of the EUDR, has not been made available by the European Commission. So these are the strategies and actions taken by the Council of Palm Oil Producing Countries, CPOPC, in addressing the EUDR. As I have mentioned in the previous last year's presentation at the same workshop, CPOPC facilitated and coordinated a high-level joint mission to Brussels at the end of May, in which that has resulted in the formation or the establishment of the ad hoc joint task force involving the European Union, Indonesia, and Malaysia as consultative engagement to address EUDR. So for the first strategies or the actions taken by CPOPC, including facilitating joint efforts of palm oil producing countries, discussion and engagement with oil palm industry, in which this is how we get ready all internally in terms of the producing countryside. And we're also collaborating with the Secretary of the Indonesian Sustainable Palm Oil and the Malaysian Sustainable Palm Oil, MSPO, dialogue with stakeholders in the EU, engagement with oil palm smallholders, and partnership and dialogue with civil society organizations in both consuming countries as well as in producing countries. So since the last International Smallholders Workshop in July, we already had the kickoff meeting of the Ad Hoc Joint Task Force, which was the first meeting, which was held on the 4th of August, 2023 in Jakarta, Indonesia. One of the key outcome of the kickoff meeting was establishment of 5 work streams, which is work stream 1 on the inclusivity of smallholders in the supply chain. 2, work stream 2 on relevant certification schemes, mandatory implementation, which involves the Indonesian sustainable palm oil and also Malaysian sustainable palm oil. Work stream 3 on traceability, which involves the traceability tools that are discussed, which will use for comply with the requirement 3, that is the due diligence statement. Work stream 4 on scientific data and deforestation and forest degradation, which is to address the country benchmarking system, in which this is where the EU observatory map is presented. And on work stream 5 in protection of privacy data. In view of the importance of the smallholders, that is one of the reasons the inclusivity of smallholders in the supply chain has been established as one of the work stream, in which in this work stream, 3 parties discuss what are the challenges faced by the oil palm smallholders and to find solutions and a win-win situation to enable the inclusivity of smallholders to supply to the EU upon the implementation of the EUDR. During the discussion at the work stream 1, it was discussed, in the EUDR, it was stipulated that small and medium-sized enterprises of the EU has been given additional 6 months to comply with the EUDR. In this context, during our ad hoc joint task force meeting, we have requested the EU to consider taking into consideration that the oil palm smallholders are also part of the SMEs or the smallholders, and therefore we also requested for the considerations of the EU to look into the same time frame to enable the smallholders of producing countries to comply with the EUDR. And in terms of work stream 2 on the ISPO and MSPO, at the ad hoc joint task force, what was discussed was identifications of gaps between the requirements of the EUDR with the ISPO and MSPO principle and criteria. And at the recent ad hoc joint task force meeting, the second ad hoc joint task force meeting, those gaps have already been identified. And currently, both countries are working into filling in the gaps in order to enable the use of ISPO and MSPO as a possible tool to ensure compliance of the EUDR requirements. And in terms of work stream 3 for traceability, both countries are in the process or already in the process of develop new traceability tools, which can be used to prove the due diligence of the EUDR that is traceable all the way to the plot of land. And in terms of scientific data on deforestation and forest degradation, the EU has presented a map, as Dr. Fadil already mentioned just now, the map presented by the EU, but there are certain gaps in which currently both countries are in the process of reviewing the maps and to engage with the EU in order to provide the accurate mapping and also to work with them to ensure that the map are accurate in order not to have the same land as what is on the ground verified data. And in terms of protection of privacy data, as you are aware, during the, as presented again by Dr. Fadil, in which is good that he has already provided most of the background for my discussion. So there are a lot of data that is required under the EUDR. So therefore, it is important for us to ensure the data are protected, especially the privacy data for producing for producers, including the smallholders. So these are still under the discussions under the ad hoc joint task force. So after the ad hoc joint task force, as I mentioned, all the strategies by CPOPC and efforts is to continue to engage with the stakeholders in the EU as well as the civil society organization and also relevant policymakers and parties at the EU to actually understand on the ground the information and the state of play of the readiness of the implementation of EUDR. In fact, 2 weeks ago, our CPOPC had another working visit to to the EU to actually continue to have extensive engagement in order to get the latest information and development regarding the readiness of the EU parties, operators, in order to comply with the EUDR. And this is what we had the second ad hoc joint task force meeting, which was held on 2nd February 2024 in Putrajaya, in which the latest progress of the 5 work stream was discussed during the ad hoc joint task force meeting. And even before the enter into force of the EUDR, CPOPC already started engagement with the oil palm smallholders because we recognize that acknowledge the importance of oil palm smallholders for the palm oil producing countries, particularly for member countries of CPOPC, namely Indonesia and Malaysia. In Indonesia, we have 41% of the planted area belonging to the oil palm smallholders, while we have 27% belonging in Malaysia. And as I mentioned, we have organized, this is the third, CPOPC International Smallholders Workshop last year. We also started to engage the smallholders, highlighting to them the challenges that they are going to face and what are the actions or efforts need to be taken in order to address the challenges faced, including the implementation of EUDR and other legislation in the importing countries. We also continue to engage with the smallholders associations in producing countries. We also have engaged with APCASINDO and also PKPKM. And we also have, we organize technical visits to smallholders farms so that we know on the ground actually what is actually they are facing, the challenges, and how we can provide those technical support in order for them to move forward and enhance their sustainability. And palm oil moving forward. First of all, we have to take into account that both member countries of CPOPC, Indonesia and Malaysia, are committed to reach net zero emissions through various approaches. In addition to that, both countries are committed to produce palm oil in a sustainable manner, as we have the Indonesian Sustainable Palm Oil Certification Scheme, as well as the Malaysian Sustainable Palm Oil Certification Scheme. This has demonstrated the commitment of both producing countries to produce palm oil in a sustainable manner to feed the global population, and also take into consideration that palm oil is not only used for food, it is also an important feedstock for to ensure energy security as well as food security. And therefore, it is through the consultative engagement through the ad hoc joint task force, which will enable us to a win-win situation solutions for palm oil producing countries as well as the consuming countries, in this context EU, in particular in addressing those 5 key issues under the work stream in order for both countries to have a smooth trade when the implementation of the EUDR enter into force and when all the requirements are applied by the end of the year. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, EUDR is also able to create an opportunities to demonstrate sustainable development of the industry. Imagine that all the palm oil or the commodities produced in producing countries are able to comply with the requirements of the EUDR. And we can tell the whole world that palm oil from Indonesia and Malaysia are produced in a sustainable manner. Once we are able to meet the EUDR, therefore, we are also able to supply to all the world, citing that we have a very high standards for producing palm oil in Malaysia and Indonesia. Because, for example, palm oil is the only vegetable oil which is subjected to the very stringent mandatory sustainable certification scheme, namely MSPO, ISPO. And palm oil is also important to achieve the socio-economic development of the producing countries, especially they are the enablers to actually achieve United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. As a new comparison, palm oil is among the most productive oil crop. So as a conclusion, CPOPC will continue to play an important role through stronger alliance and joint effort of palm oil producing countries to ensure continued market access of palm products, and strategies and actions taken are effective and positive engagement, and of course, diplomatic approach to actually addressing all the challenges faced by the global industry global market. And we want to reiterate that commitments and extensive efforts of the palm oil producing countries to produce palm oil in a sustainable manner are balancing the socio-economic development of the country. And all these positive aspects have to be communicated effectively with the global market, including the EU. With that, I thank you for your kind attention.
Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon to ladies and gentlemen, ibu-ibu and bapak-bapak. Today, I'm representing MPOB, Malaysian Pork Oil Board, agency under Ministry of Plantation and Commodities. The title given to me is How does Malaysian smallholders benefit from sour intelligent management system? Okay, this is the outline of my presentation today. The next one is, what is SIMS? SIMS is Sour Intelligent Management System, where this system actually was launched somewhere in November 2023 by our Prime Minister last year. So this system actually was established with the aims to facilitate industries in order to comply with our MPOB Act. So we have the licensing regulations where there is a clause to require our licensee to upkeep their daily record and to be inspected by our enforcement officer. So this system actually for the purpose of enforcement purposes and regulatory measures. And the second one is enable comprehensive information management, enhancing industry efficiency and cost saving. Okay, this system actually funded by our Malaysian government. So the system is, I can say the software is free to be used by our industry. And in addition, SIMS organize data to enable seamless monitoring and tracing throughout the oil palm supply chain. Okay, so this is the introduction of SIMS, where the objective to trace and monitor oil palm supply chain starting from production of FFB through by smallholders and estate up to the exportation point or manufacturer. And the function of this system is data collection. These are two functions actually for the purpose of data collection and traceability. Because we already have manually and we transform this manually record keeping into this system. And this traceability is for the centralization of data collection which supports traceability system. Okay, and the output is more on collective intelligence systems and automation of daily record. So the benefits that we can get from this system is compliance to our law. And we aim that our industry less monitored and towards the self-regulatory. And we have also by collection of this data by the industry, we can support the tracking system and easier for us to expedite the decision making by our government. And of course, for the traceability purposes. Okay. The next one is the overview of the system. Okay. When we say about the traceability, it must be from the origin of the fruits. Okay, the location from the smallholders up to the exportation point. And our supply chain is actually we go through the FFB dealers and oil palm mill, crushing factories, and all the industry players throughout this supply chain. We collected the data, and this one to be daily basis to be collected by our system. So they have to submit to the to MPOB for monitoring. And we also integrate the system that we establish with the existing system where we have our licensing profile and the monthly statement. These are the regulatory required by our country. Okay. Okay, how SIMS benefits the smallholders? Okay, this system actually smallholders is not the user of the system. What I mean is the data entry must be done by our buyer, FFB dealers, millers, and dealers like palm oil and exporters. But they can get the information through the system. We have prepared the mobile apps or web-based, and these smallholders can see the transaction, FFB transaction to these apps. We tried our best to get the smallholders get involved in the this system because we want they to monitor their own land, their own production, and their own quality of the fruits. Okay, and the information sharing here is for, we try to get to make sure that our smallholders can be reachable, and complaints, of course, if there are any complaints, they can get through the system. Okay, the FFB transaction, because the transaction done by FFB dealers and millers, so for daily basis transaction, they can get the information to this system where all the information like buyer, seller, price, volume, and we say that grading. Grading is the quality of that fruits, and they can also have can be monitored their own production, FFB production. This is actually, we want to have these smallholders have the self-awareness. So meaning that they can monitor their own land, they can have FFB yield closely, and of course they can produce the report monthly statement for the purpose of the MSPO, and we also come up with the statement for the transaction. Okay. Okay, this one is for the information sharing, where everybody, what I mean is smallholders can go to the system, register, log in, and then the email is the most important information, where we will make sure that our smallholders on board. This is towards the digital world. So we want to make the smallholders understand the system, how the system works, and they can monitor closely their own production. And any latest notification can be reached to these smallholders via these mobile apps. Okay, so because our big challenge to get involved these smallholders, because we can't get through the smallholders. So we want to make sure that our smallholders use the system, that they can have their own monitoring. Okay, and this system actually already in place, but this system actually will be mandatory by 1st of July this year to be used by our industry, and by then our smallholders can get the information through this system. Okay, and okay, the way forward, actually we want to make sure that our SIMs known to the aware by the smallholders, and we also have the planning to integrate with the GeoPalm portal, where the location of each smallholders. And the last but not least, we also collaborate with MSPO to integrate the system between SIMS and MSPO Trace to have the traceability system, both agencies, to help the industries on the EUDR purposes to generate the documentation for due diligence. Okay, that's all for my presentation.
Saya Yunus, Yunus dari Apkasindo Sumatera Selatan. Mengenai EUDR, kami berpikir kenapa kita kalah. Seharusnya kita dapat memenangkan dalam tanda kutip pertarungan dengan EUDR. jika produsen sawit terbesar Indonesia Malaysia bersatu padu bahu-membahu melawan dalam tanda kutip IUDR itu, seharusnya bisa menang.
Ya, baik. Pertanyaannya Pak.
Ya, mengapa kita kalah? Itu pertanyaan satu. Yang kemudian kami petani memerlukan dukungan yang sangat berarti atau sangat yang seharusnya jelas gitu, dukungan kepada petani untuk dapat mengadopsi, memakai teknologi tepat guna yang bisa betul-betul diterapkan oleh petani. Seperti industri hilir, industri pengolahan, kemudian AI atau data, pemanfaatan data, kemudian pemakaian teknologi mulai dari pengolahan, penanaman, maksudnya sampai ke pengolahan industri kelapa sawit tingkat pertama. Misalnya memproduksi CPO atau membuat pabrik minyak makan merah.
Baik Pak.
Kami
Pertanyaan
menginginkan dukungan itu yang lebih pasti.
Pertanyaan
Mungkin itu
kepada siapa Pak?
kepada seluruh panelis, Pak.
Jangan salah satu saja, soalnya
Ya,
yang dimonopoli. Kepada siapa Pak?
mungkin
Pilih.
Pak Dr. Fadil dan Dr. Puah.
Oke.
Terima kasih.
Time for you to answer.
Ya, ini bukan masalah kalah apa menang ini kan. Masalahnya kita apa namanya ini ada aturan yang akan diterapkan di UDR yang itu akan membuat apa
Excuse me, Pak.
namanya
I think
menyebut
it's better for English Pak, so everybody can understand. Because
Okay.
also from Papua New Guinea.
Iya, Pak. Ada translatornya juga.
No, translate from English to Indonesia.
Oh gitu. I thought this the other way around also. Yeah, it's not about winning or losing, from this regulation, but I think this is how we respond to this discriminated regulation trying to impose by the other countries. At the same time, we also understand that we still export significantly to these countries. So the solution is that how the interest of ours in this case, for example, export, the livelihood of smallholders can be accommodated by that kind of regulation. So that's why our effort is not is to ensure that EU has to somehow accommodate the interests of the smallholders, especially with their regulation. So that's the things, yeah. Or if that's not possible, then I think we have to tell EU that until we are ready to implement and adopt the regulation, we would like EU to consider the postponement of this regulation to be implemented, especially for smallholders.
Second question Pak. But the real support for
That's
small.
question for Ibu Mus actually, because Ibu Mus the government. I'm not government.
Okay, next I think Bu Puah, you want to share things?
I think Dr. Fadil said was correct. This is not about winning or losing. This is about complying with the EU requirements. First of all, whether we are able to comply or not, actually, that is within our control. Based on my understanding of the UDR requirements, most of our producer will be able to comply. First of all, on the deforestation-free regulations, I think all oil palm planted area has already been in existence before the cutoff date of the 31st December 2020. So if producing countries have already, the plantation already in place, we are already meeting the first requirements. On the second requirements on these national or legislation legality, that is based on our national law. If our oil palm smallholders, especially meeting the mandatory standards, that is the ISPO and MSPO, they will be able to comply on the second requirements based on my understanding. And in third, for the third one on the due diligence statement, it is just that we have to trace it back to the plot of land on the traceability tool. However, as we are aware that we are able to comply, but we may need more time to ensure the compliance. So therefore, as I mentioned in my presentation under the workstream 1, we want to ensure the inclusivity of the oil palm smallholders in the supply chain to supply to the EU. Therefore, we are working very hard to make sure that oil palm smallholders are included to continue supplying to the EU market. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Panitia just gets up 15 minutes, so we still have 8 minutes. Any other question? Yeah, please. Mr. Capson.
After going through the discussions on the EUDR, I can understand that for Malaysia and Indonesia, Indonesia 23 million hectares, that's huge, and that's almost half of my country's land mass. Malaysia, 5.6 million hectares, that's also huge. Now we got the EUDR regulations now being imposed. For these two economies, yeah, it's just trying to mitigate what we can do on the large land masses that we have already planted palm oil. But look at the smaller economies, like mine. As I've stated in the last meeting, I said, smallholders only 66,000 hectares, comprising of 21,000 smallholders. My government wants to plant 6 million hectares. What does the EUDR regulation does to an economy now?
Yeah. Mr. Capson, do you have any question to whom? To Dr. Puah?
Yeah.
Okay, what is your question?
How do we, what is the implication on these two different scenarios? What is the implication of the EUDR regulations?
Okay, thank you.
For new developments.
Do you have any answer for that? Dr. Fadil or Dr. Puah? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you for your questions. First of all, I think in terms of the deforestation EUDR, we will have to look at the land available in your country, whether it is currently forest based on the definitions of the EUDR. So all this is actually still, the definitions of forest is already stipulated in the EUDR. So I'm not sure what type of land that you have in your country that is planned for development of the oil palm planted area. So I'm not able to comment what is the implications to that. Yeah. So in terms of, if let's say in terms of the other two requirements, then it would, in the second one on the legality, if those planted area is based on your national legislation, you should be able to fulfill that EUDR requirements and of course traceable to the plot of land. Yeah, I hope that answered the question.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we already have another 5 minutes. Any other question? Pak R. Derajat, please. Oh, the other one, 2. So we have 2. So that's all ya. Please be concise, Pak.
Pak Bicar, bahasa Indonesia saja. Saya kira untuk Bu Puan Puah, tadi sudah disampaikan mengenai ISPO dan MSPO. Saya kira regulasi mengenai palm oil terkait masalah lingkungan, ekonomi, dan juga sosial pemerintah Indonesia sudah berkomitmen. Saya kira sama juga dengan MSPO. Bahwa kita di dalam Undang-Undang Dasar 45 yang diamandemen itu sudah memasukkan di sana bahwa pembangunan di Indonesia itu harus mengadopsi pembangunan berkelanjutan. Dan oleh karena itu turunan semua undang-undang di bawahnya Undang-Undang Dasar itu harus menyesuaikan dengan Undang-Undang Dasar 45. Baik itu hutan yang harus kita lindungi dan tujuannya adalah mengurangi deforestasi sama dengan IUDR. Oleh karena itu saya kira ISPO harus memiliki kesetaraan dengan EU. Oleh karena ini dalam hal ini peran daripada SIPOPSI secara terus-menerus saya kira diperlukan dialog bagaimana EU membuka bagaimana dasar-dasar ketentuan daripada regulasi ISPO ini sebenarnya setara dengan IUDR dan peraturan-peraturan mungkin yang ada di EU terkait lingkungan, ekonomi, dan sosial. Saya kira ini merupakan jalan tengah menurut saya di mana adanya kebuntuan-kebuntuan yang sekarang belum ketemu ya. Tapi saya kira manakala EU melirik itu ada titik temunya. Oleh karena itu perlu kita perjuangkan. Karena ISPO itu sudah menyangkut mengenai smallholder juga di Indonesia ini. Diterapkan dan itu akan menjadi wajib pada tahun 2025. Demikian Pak.
Thank you.
Terima kasih.
Thank you very much, Pak Irsyad, for your comments. So the other Bapak, please. Yes, you are. So this is the last question.
Terima kasih. Terima kasih. Jadi pertanyaan saya ini singkat, mungkin agak terkait juga dengan yang disampaikan tadi. Dan pertanyaan saya ini saya tujukan kepada Ibu Nur Hayati Muhammad ya, dari MPOB Malaysia ya. Seandainya nanti ke depan ya, seluruh petani ya, smallholder ya, sudah melaksanakan RSPO ataupun ISPO untuk Indonesia, apakah masih kemungkinan Uni Eropa masih menjegal kita, Pak, kaitannya dengan ekspor kita? Terima kasih.
Thank you, Bu Nurhayati. Please welcome.
Okay. Actually, this are you trying to ask about the system that required for the EUDR or what? Because this system actually is not mainly meant for EUDR purposes. It's on for the traceability. So you can have this system to trace back the whole supply chain from starting from the production of FFB up to the export point. So either is for the EUDR purposes or for the local requirement is or can be used for the traceability purposes.
Ya.
Ya.
Kaitannya dengan isu lingkungan, dengan isu kesehatan, Bu. Kaitannya dengan produk hilirisasi hasil daripada CPO. Terima kasih.
So actually, Pak, Sims is talking about the system of traceability. So your question must be directed to not the Sims, but to the overall. So I think because time is so limited, I think we can discuss this later, Pak, because we have one question from the Slido. I'm sorry about this. So please raise the question from the Slido. So the question from Mr. Fauzan, we have the issue regarding smallholder plantation location and kawasan or protecting area. What's your approach to address this issue? So I think who can answer this question? Pak Fadil, Bu Puah?
For the sake to answer this question, I think we have already a framework or regulation how to address these issues, as in the omnibus law, yeah. We have like Article 110A and 110B. How then we address the issue of the oil palm plantation who are in the forest areas. But I also understand that this implementation of this regulation, this article to address this issue is not very smooth. There are a lot of other requirement by the government when we trying to apply that regulation, that article to solve the problem of oil palm plantation in the forest areas. And since it is very specific to the Indonesian case, I think maybe better we discuss it in the other occasion. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Fadil and all the presenter. Please give applause to them because it's very useful for us. Thank you very much.